Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video. We are now just a little over 1 month away from Gamescom. Gamescom, for those of you guys that are unfamiliar, is a video game convention or a trade show as they're known in the industry. It's the biggest one in Europe, and it's also where Monster Hunter World is going to be playable for the first time. It runs from August 22nd to the 26th. I will be there for 2 days, for the first 2 days, which means I should have plenty of time to test stuff out and bring you guys some gameplay. So it's fair to say, I'm counting down the days right now. I am pretty damn excited. So much so that I basically keep rewatching the same gameplay over and over again. It is becoming a bit of an obsession. I'm starting to see nothing but forests and angry dinosaurs. But anyway, that aside, today I wanted to talk about a few more things from the gameplay, a few things that I haven't had a chance to speak about personally. A couple of these were actually observations from some of you guys in the comments in my last video, so shout out to you guys for pointing out some extra stuff. So if you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated, and as always, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments down below. Now first up, going back to the tail cut that happened during the European gameplay, apart from everyone losing their mind that the hunter didn't actually carve the tail, the interesting thing here is that the tail, or more broadly, the part that you cut off or break, since for some monsters it's not always going to be tails, this part is actually marked on your minimap. Now for those of you guys that are new to Monster Hunter, typically when a part is cut off or broken off, you wait until it's safe before you carve, unless of course you want to risk getting trampled on by the monster or shouted at by your teammates. The only problem with this is that sometimes, if you're forgetful like me, then by the time you finish fighting the monster, you completely forget to carve the tail, you carry on about your business, and then you realise later on that you can't remember where you left it. Well, thankfully tail cuts and other broken parts are now marked on the map. This is actually something they introduced in Monster Hunter Double Cross, where it would be marked with like a little silver or grey icon, so I'm personally super glad that this was moved forward. Now it's kind of hard to see, but if we zoom in on the minimap, you can see at the exact moment the tail was cut, of course the icon jumps back because it causes the monster to flinch, then jumps back, and if you actually wait a few seconds for like the Anjanath to move out of the way and the Great Jagras to pass, you can see this little tiny icon here that is a tail. So that is of course your indicator as to A, the fact the tail has been cut off, if it wasn't already a big enough giveaway, and of course also where you can find it. Now assuming for a moment that they don't actually despawn after a while, then the combination of fast travel between multiple base camps and the fact that you have time after the hunt, then with those in mind you could just as easily wait until the hunt is done and then go and get it at the end. But either way, that's pretty cool, especially given that you now have the ability to kind of bring up the map at any time you want, then of course you can scan around and find where that tail is. Next up, speaking of having time after the hunt, you might have noticed that when you complete the hunt it says returning to the camp in 30 seconds. The nice thing about the post-hunt sequence in World is that you'll actually be able to choose when you want to return to the town or the hub. Again, for those of you that are new to the series, typically when you complete a quest in previous Monster Hunter games, depending on whether it's a hunt or a capture quest, you are then given a short timer before you are taken back to town. This time is typically used to carve the monster or gather items in the vicinity. In World, they said during E3 that you'll be able to pick up additional quests from the handler back at camp, that is of course the lady in yellow here. We don't have details on these just yet, but if I had to hazard a guess, I'd say they'd be the kind of gathering quests of old, things like while you're out here, gather 10 special mushrooms or killer beetles, something like that. So having the freedom to do stuff post-quest and still like explore is going to be pretty handy. It'd also give you the scope to perhaps go and hunt some more monsters that are outside of the core quest if you want some extra parts. Again, pretty cool. The other thing, while on the topic of carving, if you saw at the end of the hunt when the hunter is carving monster parts, the first time he encounters a new monster part, it actually has a rather useful description. In this case, there were two examples. Anjanath Nosebone is listed as an Anjanath material obtained by breaking its snout, unusual, used in select gear. And of course followed by the Anjanath Pelt, another Anjanath material, obtained by carving, highly heat resistant, used to craft gear. Now this is pretty cool, especially if it ends up being something we can perhaps look up at a later date. It'll make hunting monsters and tracking parts a lot more convenient. For those of you that play the game a lot now, then you more than likely visit sites like the Monster Hunter Wiki or Kodaniko to look up where certain parts come from and their drop rates. You want a plate? Well, you know that you can get it by doing X, Y, and Z, and Y has the highest drop rate. Admittedly, this prompt on screen is pretty basic with no numbers, but having that sort of info in game is still pretty cool. A lot of it is common sense. Sure, if you want a nose bone, you probably want to break the nose. You need a tail, you should probably cut that tail. But regardless, having those sort of tips as you start hunting new monsters and farming parts, definitely pretty useful. I mean, in the examples we got, the nose bone lists that it comes specifically from breaking the nose, whereas the Anjanath pelt is just by carving the monster. So you kind of get an idea as to whether or not parts need specific actions or whether they're just sort of broad parts you get from everything. So yeah, kind of cool. Then finally, the last thing I want to touch on was actually the tracker at the bottom of the screen by the minimap. At its most basic form, it allows you to track the monster. We know this already. It links to the scout flyers, and when you discover it, you can track it. You can also click R3 to swap between the other options. So in this gameplay, the first monster they encountered was the Great Jagras, so that's the trackable option, then Anjanath, and later Rathalos. The heartbeat sensor serves to indicate both enraged state and vague well-being of the monster. It's not a health bar, but obviously once you've battered the monster a lot and you see it limping, then the slightly weaker heartbeat further reinforces that it's a little bit worse for wear. However, what I actually want to focus on more occurs at the end of the quest once the Anjanath is dead. It seems you can also use the tracker to track small monsters too. Throughout the hunt, you'll see other monsters pop in and out of this menu, likely tied to proximity. But here, for example, we have some sort of bug, a Jagras, a Great Jagras, and of course the Rathalos. Now this is going to be super handy when doing some of those like kill 20 small monster quests or something like that. Or if you have to go and find X number of bugs. Depending on how extensive this tracker is, then being able to home in on some more of those monsters is going to be so useful, especially since the map is considerably bigger now. It actually reminds me of, say, the tracker in Zelda Breath of the Wild, how you can sort of turn your shrine tracker into something to track certain monsters, plants, insects, other things like that. Now, moving outside of the gameplay for a moment, there's just a couple of extracts from an interview that I wanted to speak about. This actually cropped up a couple of weeks back on VG 24/7, but with everything that's been going on lately, I must have missed it. It was an interview with Tsujimoto-san, the producer, and Tokuda-san, the director. The interview begins with a recap on a lot of the stuff that we already know. Comments on how the game has changed, how some of those new gameplay mechanics support these changes, you know, the usual kind of stuff like that. But what I thought was cool was actually a note a little bit later on the multiplayer. Now, I will link this interview down below if you want to read the whole thing, but we know that World supports drop-in multiplayer. You can begin a quest solo, and then if your friends come home later or you decide you need some help, you can then shoot up a flare and they can then join you in progress. However, this system isn't exclusively for your friends, as we might have previously thought. It's actually more of an open invitation to anyone that's playing the game. To take a quote directly from the interview, if you're already on a quest alone and are connected online while playing and find the monster is too much, you can send up an SOS flare. People on the server will then get a notification that someone is stuck on that quest, and they can then accept that quest and jump right in to help you. Even without a pre-planned meetup in the hub, you'll still be able to notice someone needs help and jump right into multiplayer. We'll have more exciting announcements to make about multiplayer later. Now, that is pretty cool. I mean, much like how you can go into someone's online room in Monster Hunter right now and join them, you could equally just be chilling in the hub, see someone wants help, and then hop in from there. So that's pretty sweet. It's not just for your friends, it is basically for everyone. So for those of you guys that are new to the series, again, if you're not necessarily, say, jumping into the series with your friends, you might be the only one in your group of friends picking it up, then know that there will always be help online. And then the other thing that was spoken about at the very end of the interview pertained to post-launch DLC. Now, for existing players, you will know that Monster Hunter has always been pretty good at providing ongoing DLC support. Completely free, that adds quests, collaboration armor sets, weapons, stuff like that. When asked whether this will be the same for World, the answer was, well, as you know, Monster Hunter has a long tradition of being really generous with our post-launch rollout in terms of updating the roster of quests that are available, and we plan to keep that same system here. So after the game releases, we're going to have a rollout of time-limited event quests for you to join and bring out more content for players to enjoy online as the game rolls on. So yeah, you can look forward to lots of post-launch excitement. Now obviously at this stage we don't know what Capcom's plan is for this, whether it will continue to mirror the 3DS model of free content or whether there'll be a mix of free and paid, but knowing that there is still a plan to roll out those events is going to be pretty sweet. For those of you that are new to the series, one of the things that Capcom has always been good at doing with Monster Hunter is introducing really cool collaborations, armor sets and weapons that cross over from other games or anime, and you then go on a hunt to farm specific parts needed to make that gear, and then you craft it in-game. Some of them have been really wacky, others super cool, so it's definitely a fun thing to take part in. Now, that's pretty much it for the time being. However, before I wrap up this video, I do want to round out with a couple of things that you guys might have missed recently. I'm currently running a giveaway for some HyperX stuff, a headset, a mouse, and something else that's not yet been announced, but will be soon, so I'll leave a link to that in the description box down below if you guys want to enter. We also hit 500,000 subscribers the other day, which is absolutely insane, so thank you very much for all the support. You guys are absolutely amazing, and I honestly can't tell you guys how awesome it is to have so much excitement surrounding Monster Hunter lately. It is definitely going to be a good year for us fans, and I can't wait to dive into the game early next year. I will be kicking off some more giveaways soon, some pretty big ones actually, to celebrate hitting 500k. That giveaway may also include a Nintendo Switch, among other things, so once that's all sorted, I'll upload a video on the channel, likely in the next sort of week or so, with some details on all that. And finally, I just want to give a quick shout out to the guys over at the CARVE podcast. They've recently kicked off a new Monster Hunter podcast with the intention of releasing weekly episodes. I spent the morning catching up. They are doing great work, super positive attitude, and they're aiming to sort of bridge the gap. It's not designed to be like a super hardcore numbers-driven podcast. It's more about like building a bigger awareness around Monster Hunter, talking about some of the cool stuff, and for those of you guys that might be like newer to the series, then it will sort of act as like a good sort of entry point to the franchise. So I highly recommend checking it out. I will link their Reddit post down below, since there's a lot of different places you can listen to it depending on your podcast preference. But for the time being, that's it from me. That is a bit more information on Monster Hunter World. As always, any questions, drop them down below. Hopefully we get some more news before Gamescom. I know it's only a month away, but a month is still a pretty long time, and there's only so many times I can rewatch the same gameplay. Anyway, thank you for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.